Okay, so we're hitting pause on the usual flow for a minute because there's this story, I don't know, it just sticks with you. And honestly, with everyone getting sick lately, like, something's always going around, it kind of fits. But this isn't just about being sick. This is about a man who had everything going for him. Power, respect, success, and yet, underneath it all, he was slowly falling apart. And yeah, that's where things get really interesting. So here's where the story really starts to take shape. You've got this man, his name is Naaman, and on the surface, I mean, everything about his life looks impressive. He's not just some random soldier. He's the commander of the entire army of Syria. That's a big deal. This is a guy with authority, influence. People listening to his every word. When he walks into a room, people notice. He's respected. He's accomplished. And he's proven himself over and over again in battle. And it even says something kind of surprising, like, the victories he's had. Those weren't just random wins. There's this sense that God actually allowed him to succeed. Which is interesting, right? Because Naaman isn't even part of Israel. He's not someone you'd expect to be connected to God's work. And yet, here he is, rising, winning, leading. So you've got power, you've got honor, you've got recognition. Honestly, if you were just looking at his resume, you'd probably think, yeah, this guy has it all figured out. But then, there's that one line, and it kind of stops everything. It says, but he was a leper, and that changes the whole picture. Because now you realize, underneath all that success, something is deeply wrong. This isn't a small issue. This isn't like, you know, a minor inconvenience he can just push through. Leprosy in that time, it was terrifying. People feared it. It could spread. It could isolate you. And in many cases, it would just slowly take your life. It wasn't just physical either. It affected everything: your relationships, your place in society, your future. So imagine that contrast for a second. On one hand, he's leading armies. On the other, he's carrying this disease that could strip everything away from him. It's kind of this strange tension, right? Like, how can someone be so strong and so fragile at the same time? And honestly, that's what makes this story feel so real. Because you can have everything going right on the outside and still be dealing with something that no one else really sees now. Zoom out a little bit because there's more going on here than just Naaman. Syria, where he's from, and Israel, they're neighbors, but not the friendly kind. These two nations didn't exactly get along. There's history there. Conflict. Tension. Back and forth. At one point, things might have been calmer, but by this time, Syria is growing stronger and they're starting to push into Israel's territory. And one of the ways that shows up is through raids. So basically, Syrian forces would go into Israelite land, take what they wanted, and sometimes they'd take people. And that's where this young girl comes in. She's not given a name. We don't know her background, her family, what her life looked like before all of this. All we know is that she was taken from Israel and brought into Syria as a captive. And now she's serving in Naaman's household, specifically attending to his wife. And it's easy to just read past that detail, but if you slow down for a second, this is not a good situation for her. She didn't choose this. She didn't ask to be there. She's been pulled out of her home, her people, everything familiar, and placed in a foreign land, serving the family of a man whose army helped cause that suffering. So if anyone had a reason to be bitter, it would be her. If anyone had a reason to just stay quiet, keep her head down, and not get involved, it would be her. But this is where the story takes a turn that's kind of unexpected, because one day, she speaks up, and what she says is simple, but it carries a lot of weight. She tells Naaman's wife something like, "If only my master were with the prophet in Samaria, he would be healed." That's it. No big speech, no long explanation, just this quiet, confident statement. And it's easy to miss how bold that actually is. Because think about it, she's talking about a prophet from Israel, from her homeland, the very place that was just attacked. She's pointing Naaman, the commander of the enemy army, towards someone who represents the God of Israel. That takes faith, and not just faith in general, but faith that God can work even in a situation that feels completely unfair. It's kind of incredible, actually. She doesn't let her circumstances shut her down. She doesn't say, well, this is my life now, so I'll just keep quiet. Instead, she sees an opportunity, and she takes it. And here's the thing, that one sentence, that small moment, it becomes the turning point of the entire story. Because without her, Naaman probably never even hears about the possibility of healing. It's almost ironic, right? You've got this powerful military commander, all the resources, all the influence, and the first real step toward his healing comes from a young, unnamed servant girl who has none of that. Like, if you were writing this story, you might expect the breakthrough to come from someone important, someone with authority, someone with status. But instead, it comes from the least expected place. And there's something really beautiful about that, because it shows that impact isn't always tied to position. She doesn't have a platform. She doesn't have power. She doesn't even have freedom in the way we'd think about it. But she has something else. She knows where hope is, and she's willing to point someone toward it, even if that someone is technically her enemy. And I don't know, there's just something about that that sticks with you, because it raises a quiet question in the background, like, where have you been placed right now? Not where you wish you were, not where you think you should be, but where you actually are. Because this girl didn't choose her situation, but she still became part of something bigger. And again, we don't hear much about her after this. She kind of fades out of the story. No spotlight, no recognition, nothing like that. But her role, it's huge. She sets everything in motion, and it's just this reminder that sometimes the most significant moments don't look dramatic at all. They're quiet, they're simple, they're easy to overlook, but they matter. So now you've got all the pieces starting to come together. A powerful man with a hidden problem, a broken relationship between nations, and a young girl in the middle of it all, pointing towards something better. And you can kind of feel it building, right? Like something's about to happen. Because once that idea is planted, once Naaman hears there might be a way to be healed, you just know he's not going to ignore it. I mean, when you're desperate enough, you start paying attention to even the smallest bit of hope. And that's exactly where this story is headed next. So after hearing that, after this quiet, almost offhand comment from a servant girl, you can imagine Naaman kind of sitting with it for a second, like, wait, what? There's someone who can actually do something about this, because up until now, he's got power, sure, but not over this, not over his condition. And when you're dealing with something like that, you don't really ignore even a small chance at healing. So he does something interesting. He doesn't just brush it off, he takes it seriously. He goes straight to his king. Now, think about that for a second. This isn't just a personal errand. This is a military commander going to the king of Syria and basically saying, hey, I heard there's a prophet in Israel who might be able to heal me. That's a bold move, especially considering the tension between the two nations. But the king of Syria doesn't shut it down. In fact, he supports it, which is kind of surprising, right? You'd think there might be hesitation, like, why would we send one of our top commanders into enemy territory? But instead, the king leans into it. He says, essentially, go, I'll back you up. And not just with permission, with influence. He writes a letter, a formal official letter to the king of Israel. And that changes everything, because now this isn't just Naaman showing up on his own. This is a diplomatic situation. This is one king reaching out to another, making a request that's honestly kind of impossible. And then there's what Naaman brings with him. He doesn't travel light. I mean, this is where it starts to feel almost excessive. He takes silver, gold, and multiple sets of clothing, valuable, expensive items. By today's standards, we're talking about a massive amount of wealth. Like, this isn't just a thank you gift. This is the kind of offering you bring when you're expecting something big in return, which tells you something about his mindset. He's expecting a solution, but not just any solution. He's expecting something that can be paid for, negotiated, handled through status and resources, and honestly, that makes sense from his perspective. That's how his world works. You have a problem, you bring your power, your connections, your wealth, and you fix it. So with all of that, he sets out. You can almost picture the scene: horses, chariots, this whole entourage moving toward Israel. It's not subtle. This is a high-profile arrival, and eventually, he reaches the king of Israel. Now here's where things start to kind of unravel, because the king of Israel receives the letter, reads it, and instead of seeing hope, he sees a problem, a big one. The letter basically says, "I've sent Naaman to you so that you may heal him of his leprosy." And the king of Israel is like, hold on. What you can almost hear the panic setting in. Because from his perspective, this isn't a reasonable request. This is an impossible demand. He's thinking, am I God? Do I have the power to give life or take it away? How am I supposed to heal someone from something like this? And then his mind goes somewhere else. He starts to suspect something. Because remember, these two nations are not on good terms. So instead of seeing this as a genuine request, he starts thinking, this is a setup. Like, this is the king of Syria trying to pick a fight. Because if Naaman isn't healed, which in his mind is basically guaranteed, then Syria has an excuse to say, you failed us, and escalate things. It's almost like a trap disguised as a request. And the king of Israel reacts dramatically. He tears his clothes, which in that culture is a sign of distress, frustration, even fear. He's overwhelmed. He doesn't know what to do, and honestly, it makes sense. Because he's looking at the situation purely from a human standpoint, he sees the problem, the political tension, the impossible expectation, and that's it. There's no category in his thinking for divine intervention, no space for something beyond his own ability. So to him, this is just bad news. But then, word gets out, and it reaches Elisha. Now Elisha is the prophet in Israel, the one the servant girl was talking about. And when he hears what's happening, when he hears that the king has torn his clothes and is basically spiraling, he steps in. He sends a message, and it's simple, but it cuts through all the confusion. He says, "Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come to me." That's it. No panic. No overthinking. No fear. Just confidence. And there's something really striking about that contrast. The king sees a threat. Elisha sees an opportunity. The king sees an impossible demand. Elisha sees something God can handle. And he adds one more line, something that kind of hints at what's really going on beneath the surface. He says, "Let him come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." In other words, this isn't just about Naaman getting healed. There's something bigger happening here. This is about revealing who God is, and suddenly, the tension shifts. Because now the situation isn't stuck in that place of fear and misunderstanding anymore. There's direction, there's clarity. Naaman isn't just going to the king, he's being redirected to the prophet. And you can kind of feel the story building again. Right, all the expectations, all the assumptions, all the pressure. It's all about to meet something completely different than what anyone imagined. But at this point, Naaman still thinks he knows how this is going to go. He's got the letter. He's got the gifts. He's got the authority backing him. In his mind, this is just the next step toward getting what he came for. He has no idea yet that things are about to unfold in a way he never expected. So Naaman finally makes it. After all that build up the journey, the letter, the gifts, the expectations, he arrives at Elisha's house. And you can almost picture the scene, right? It's not just one guy casually walking up to a door. This is a full-on arrival. Horses, chariots, attendants. probably dust kicking up as they come to a stop. It's loud, it's noticeable. This is the kind of entrance that says, someone important is here. Because in Naaman's world, that matters. Status matters. Presence matters. The way you show up, it says something about who you are. And Naaman, he's showing up like a man who expects to be taken seriously. He's got the wealth with him, silver, gold, expensive clothing. He's got the authority behind him, the king of Syria's letter. He's got the reputation commander of an army, a man of victory. Everything about this moment is built around expectation. He expects a certain kind of response. He expects respect. He expects attention, and honestly, he probably expects something a little dramatic. Like, if you've come this far, if you've invested this much, if you're dealing with something this serious, you're not expecting something simple. You're expecting a moment. A big moment. Maybe he's imagining Elisha coming out to greet him personally. Standing there, looking him in the eye, saying something powerful, calling on God in some visible, undeniable way, maybe even something physical like a gesture, a touch, a moment where everything shifts instantly. You can almost hear the thoughts in his head. This is it. This is where it happens. So he pulls up, and he waits, and then something strange happens. Elisha doesn't come out. Not at all. Instead, a messenger shows up. Not the prophet himself. Not the man he traveled all this way to see. Just a messenger. And that alone already changes the tone. Because now, instead of being met face to face, Naaman is being addressed from a distance, indirectly. Like he's not even important enough for Elisha to step outside. And then the message comes, it's short, simple, almost underwhelming. Go and wash in the Jordan River 7 times. Then your flesh will be restored, and you will be clean. That's it. No ceremony, no build-up, no dramatic prayer, no personal interaction. Just instructions, and not even impressive instructions. Just go wash 7 times in the Jordan River, and something in Naaman just snaps. Because this is not what he expected. Not even close. You can feel the frustration rising almost instantly. Like, wait. What? That's it. After everything, after the journey, the effort, the preparation, this is what I get, a messenger and a bath. It's almost insulting. Actually, no, it is insulting. Because from his perspective, this feels like a complete disregard for who he is. He's not being treated like a commander. He's not being honored. He's not even being acknowledged properly. Elisha didn't come out, didn't speak to him directly, didn't even give him the dignity of a face-to-face conversation. And for someone like Naaman, that matters. So his reaction, it's intense. He's furious, not just annoyed, not just confused, furious. And you can hear it in what he says. He starts talking about what he thought was going to happen. I thought he would surely come out to me. Right there, that word thought, that expectation. That's where everything starts to unravel. I thought he would stand, call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the place, and heal the leprosy. See, in his mind, this was supposed to be a moment, something visible, something impressive, something that matched the seriousness of his condition and the weight of his identity. He wanted to see it happen. He wanted to feel it happen. He wanted something that made sense in his world. But instead, he got something that felt small, too simple, too ordinary, and honestly, a little humiliating. Because now, instead of standing tall as a commander receiving a miracle, he's being told to go wash in a river like anyone else, like there's nothing special about him at all. And then he goes even further. He starts comparing. He brings up the rivers back home. Aren't the rivers of Damascus better than all the waters of Israel? And you can hear the frustration, but also the pride underneath it. Because now, it's not just about the method, it's about where he's being told to go. The Jordan River. And to him, that place is beneath him. It's not impressive. It's not clean. It's not what he's used to. It's disappointing. Maybe even a little disgusting. And he's thinking, if I'm going to do something like this, couldn't I at least do it somewhere better? Somewhere that actually feels worthy of the situation. Because again, in his mind, everything should match the importance of who he is and what he's dealing with. And the Jordan doesn't match that. So now, it's not just frustration, it's rejection. He basically says, why couldn't I just wash in my own rivers and be clean? Which really means, why do I have to do it your way? And that's where the pride starts to show up clearly. Because underneath all the anger, all the disappointment, all the frustration, there's this deeper issue. Control. He had an idea of how this should go. He had an expectation, and when that expectation wasn't met, instead of adjusting, he pushes back hard because doing it this way would mean letting go of how he thinks things should work. And that's not easy, especially for someone who's used to being in charge. So what does he do? He turns around and he leaves in a rage, not quietly, not thoughtfully, but angry, frustrated, offended. He came all this way, and now he's walking away from the very thing he came for, because it didn't look the way he expected. And honestly, that moment right there, it's kind of painful to watch, because you can see how close he is. Like, he's right there. The answer is literally within reach. But his expectations and his pride are getting in the way. And you can almost feel the tension building. Like this could go either way. He could walk away and miss it completely, or something could shift. But at this point, all you see is a man who feels disrespected, overlooked, and honestly a little humiliated. He didn't get the moment he thought he deserved. He didn't get the recognition he expected. And he definitely didn't get the kind of solution that fits neatly into his understanding of how things should work. Instead, he got something simple, something uncomfortable, something that requires him to step out of his status and just obey. And right now, he's not having it. He's walking away, angry, frustrated, and completely missing the fact that the answer he's looking for is still right in front of him. So Naaman turns away. Right, he's furious. You can almost feel the tension in that moment. His pride is loud, his expectations are shattered, and he's ready to walk away from the very thing he came for. And then something really quiet happens. His servants step in, not with force, not with authority, just gently. And I don't know, there's something about that moment that feels really important. Because these aren't powerful people. These aren't kings or prophets. These are just the people around him, close enough to speak, but humble enough to do it carefully. And they say something so simple. They call him father, which is more like a term of respect, and then they ask him a question. If the prophet had told you to do something great, wouldn't you have done it? And that question just kind of hangs there, because the answer is obvious. Of course he would have. If Elisha had said, go conquer this city, or bring 1,000 sacrifices, or do something big, something impressive, something that matches your status, Naaman would have been all in. He wouldn't have hesitated, because that kind of thing fits his world. That kind of thing feels worthy of him. But then they say this, how much more? Then, when he tells you, wash and be clean. And that's it. No pressure, no argument, just truth. And you can almost see it hitting him, like, wait, why am I refusing this? Why am I so upset about something that's actually simple? Because the issue was never really the river, and it wasn't even the instruction. It was his pride. It was the fact that this didn't feel big enough for him. It didn't match his expectations. It didn't match his identity. But now, standing there, with his servants gently calling him out, something starts to shift. And this is the turning point, because now he has a choice. He can keep walking away, or he can let go of his pride and do the simple thing, and we don't get all the details here. We don't hear his inner dialogue. We don't know exactly what he says next. But we do know what he does. He turns around, and he goes to the Jordan. And I imagine that walk probably feels different than before. Because earlier, he was walking with confidence, with expectation, with this sense of, I know how this is gonna go. But now it's quieter, more uncertain, maybe even a little awkward, because he's about to do something that feels beneath him. And yet, he goes anyway, step by step. And that's what faith often looks like. Not this big dramatic leap, just one step, then another, even when it doesn't fully make sense, even when it's uncomfortable. So he gets to the river, and again, this isn't some perfect, clean, beautiful setting. This is the Jordan. It's not impressive, it's not glamorous, it's just water. And now, the moment is here. He has to decide if he's really going to do this. If he's really going to follow through. Because up until now, it's all been talk. Now it's action. So he steps in, and I can imagine it being a little tense, like, okay, here we go. And then he dips under the water. Once, he comes back up, and nothing changes. Same skin, same condition, no difference. And I don't know what's going through his mind, but I can guess. Is this really going to work? This feels pointless, but he was told 7 times. So he goes again. Second time, down and up, still nothing. Third time, fourth, fifth. And at this point, it's got to feel kind of frustrating, like I'm doing what I was told, but I'm not seeing anything happen. And this is where a lot of people would stop. Because when you don't see results right away, it's easy to assume it's not working, but he keeps going. 6th time, still nothing. And now you're right on the edge, because there's just one more step, and this is where it gets really powerful, because everything comes down to this moment of, will he finish what he started? Will he trust the instruction, even when it hasn't made sense so far? So he goes under one more time. 7th time. And when he comes back up, everything changes. Just like that, his skin is completely restored. Not just better, not just improved. It says it was like the skin of a little child. Clean, new, whole. And you can almost picture the moment. He looks at his hands. He looks at his arms. He sees it. And for the first time in who knows how long, there's nothing there. No disease, no marks, no signs of what was slowly destroying him. Gone. Completely gone. And I imagine there's just this pause. Like, did that really just happen? And then it hits him. He's healed. Actually healed. And it didn't come through something dramatic. It didn't come through something complicated. It came through obedience, through surrender, through doing the simple thing he almost refused to do. And suddenly, everything that felt too small turns out to be exactly what he needed. And that's the moment where everything shifts, not just physically, but internally, because he didn't just get his health back. Something in him had to change to get there. He had to let go of control. He had to step out of his pride. He had to trust, yes, even when it didn't make sense. And it happened one step at a time, not all at once, not instantly, but through a process, through persistence, through choosing to keep going. Even when nothing seemed to be happening yet, and now, standing there, completely healed, you can just feel the weight of that moment because everything is different. The man who walked away in anger is not the same man standing in that river now. Something deeper has shifted, and it all started with a simple decision. to stop resisting and just obey. And this is where the story kind of slows down, because if you just rush past what just happened, you'll miss the weight of it. Naaman didn't just get healed, something deeper shifted in him. And when you step back and really look at it, there are a few things in this story that they stick with you. And the first one is this: God's plan doesn't always look like what we expect. Actually, a lot of the time, it doesn't. Think about Naaman for a second. From the very beginning, he had a picture in his head of how this was going to go. He thought Elisha would come out, stand in front of him, maybe say something powerful, call on God, wave his hand over the spot, and boom, healed. That's what made sense to him. That's what felt right. That's what matched the seriousness of his situation and the importance of who he was. But that's not what happened. Not even close. Instead, God's plan looked simple, unexpected, honestly, a little uncomfortable. Go to a river you don't like and wash 7 times. That was it. And at first, he almost missed it because it didn't match his expectations. And I don't know, that hits pretty close to home because we do the same thing. We come into situations with our own ideas, our own plans, our own expectations of how things should go. We think if God's going to move, it's going to look like this. Or if this is really going to work out, it needs to happen this way. And then when it doesn't, when it looks different, quieter, simpler, even a little inconvenient, we start to question it, or worse, we walk away from it, just like Naaman almost did. Because sometimes the problem isn't that God isn't working. It's that he's not working the way we expected, and that requires something from us. It requires us to let go of control, to say, okay, maybe I don't fully understand this, but I'm willing to trust it. Which leads right into the second thing. Faith is usually just the next step. Not 10 steps ahead. Not the full picture. Just the next step. And you see that so clearly in Naaman's story. He didn't go from sick to healed in one instant decision. There was a process. He had to walk to the river. He had to step into the water. He had to dip once, and nothing happened. Twice, still nothing. 3 times, 4 times, 5, 6, no change. And yet, he kept going. That's faith. Not because it felt amazing, not because it was exciting, but because he chose to keep moving forward, even when he couldn't see the result yet. And that's where it gets real. Because a lot of us want faith to feel big, like this huge, confident leap where everything just makes sense. But most of the time, it's not like that. It's quiet, it's steady, it's doing the thing you've been asked to do, even when it feels awkward, or small, or honestly kind of uncomfortable. And sometimes it feels like nothing's happening. Like you're on dip number 3 or 4 and you're thinking, is this even working? But the breakthrough doesn't come until you keep going. Until you finish what you were told to do. And that's what Naaman did. He didn't stop halfway. He didn't walk out of the river and say, well, I tried. He followed through 1 step at a time. And that's when everything changed. And then there's the third thing, and this one might be the most important. God's grace can't be earned, it can't be bought, and it definitely can't be negotiated. Because remember, Naaman didn't show up empty-handed. He came prepared to pay. He brought silver, gold, expensive clothing, more than enough to make this worth someone's time. Because in his world, that's how things worked. You want something valuable, you offer something in return, you make the exchange. But when he's healed, when everything is restored, his first instinct is still to give something back, to offer a gift, to say, here, take this, let me repay you. And Elisha refuses completely, doesn't take anything. And that's not random, that's intentional, because the healing didn't come from Elisha, it came from God. And God's grace doesn't work like a transaction. It's not something you earn by being good enough. It's not something you pay for with effort or money or status. It's given freely. And that's hard for us sometimes because we like earning things. We like feeling like we contributed, like we deserved it, like we did something to make it happen. But grace doesn't work that way. Naaman didn't deserve to be healed. He wasn't part of Israel. He wasn't following God. He was in many ways an outsider. And yet, he received something he couldn't earn, and that changes you. Because when you realize something has been given to you, not because of what you've done, but because of who God is, it shifts your perspective. It humbles you. It makes you grateful. And that's exactly what you start to see in Naaman. He goes from angry, entitled, and frustrated to someone who recognizes something bigger than himself, something real, something powerful. And it didn't come through his strength. It came through surrender, through letting go of his expectations, through taking one step at a time, and through receiving something he could never pay for. And when you look at all of that together, it paints a really clear picture. God's ways might not match ours. Faith might feel slower and simpler than we want it to. And grace will always be something we receive, not something we achieve. And somehow, in the middle of all that, that's where the real change happens. So after all of that, Naaman doesn't just quietly leave. He turns around, and this time, it's different. Because the man who walked away earlier in anger, frustrated and offended, is not the same man coming back now. He returns to Elisha, not with pride, not with demands, but with something else entirely: gratitude. And when he stands there, he says something that really marks the shift in his heart. He says, "Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel." That's a big statement, because this isn't just about being healed anymore. This is about realization, clarity. He's seen something real, something he can't explain away, something he can't take credit for, and now he knows, not guesses, not wonders, knows the God of Israel is the true God. And that changes everything, because what started as a physical problem led him to a spiritual awakening. He came looking for healing in his body, but what he encountered was something deeper. And his first response is exactly what you might expect. He wants to give something back. He offers the gifts he brought, all that silver, all that gold, the clothing, everything he prepared earlier, thinking it would be part of the solution. Now he wants to hand it over as a thank you. But again, Elisha refuses, and that matters, because it reinforces what this whole story has been pointing to. This wasn't earned. This wasn't bought. This wasn't something Naaman paid for or deserved because of his status or effort. It was given freely by God, and that's something Naaman has to sit with now, because his instincts are still wired toward earning, toward exchanging, toward doing something in return. But this doesn't work like that. God's mercy doesn't come with a price tag. And that's where the story opens up into something bigger than just one man being healed. Because what happened to Naaman, it reflects something all of us deal with. We all have this tendency to think we have to earn our way, that if we just do enough, give enough, try hard enough, maybe we'll deserve what we're asking for. But this story gently and clearly pushes back on that idea. Naaman didn't earn his healing. He couldn't. All he could do was receive it. And that's where the deeper meaning comes in, because yes, his body was healed completely, miraculously, but even that wasn't the end of the story, because physical healing, as incredible as it is still temporary. Eventually, life goes on, time passes, the body changes again. But what Naaman experienced here pointed to something beyond that, something lasting. He didn't just walk away clean, he walked away changed, with a new understanding of who God is, with a new awareness that there's something greater than power, status, or control. And that's where the hope starts to expand, because this idea of grace, this undeserved, freely given mercy, it doesn't stop with one moment. It points forward to something that doesn't fade, something that doesn't break down over time, an inheritance that's kept, preserved, untouched. And suddenly, Naaman's story feels less like a one-time miracle and more like a glimpse. A glimpse of what it looks like when God steps in, not just to fix what's broken on the surface, but to restore something deeper. And the response to that, it's not payment, it's not performance, it's trust, it's obedience, it's receiving what's been given. Naaman couldn't buy his healing, but he could accept it. He couldn't earn God's mercy, but he could recognize it. And now, standing there, everything about him reflects that shift. He's no longer just the commander with a problem. He's someone who has seen what God can do, and that changes how he walks away from this moment. Not just healed, but aware. Not just restored, but transformed. And that's what makes this part of the story so powerful, because it reminds you that what God gives isn't just about the moment, it's about what it leads you into. A life of trusting, a life of obeying, a life of receiving, what you could never earn on your own. And I guess that's the part that lingers. It's not always the big dramatic moments. You know, sometimes it's the simple, humbling steps, the ones we almost overlook, that change everything. Naaman didn't earn it. He just chose to trust and follow through. And maybe that's where it starts for us too. If this story stuck with you, you can like the video. Maybe stick around for more. There's a lot more like this worth exploring,